This morning I'm going to talk about building a life. And at the beginning of the year, if you all remember, we talked about our focus this year as a company being growing ourselves and others. How many people remember that? I'm just curious. That was the season for the company, growing ourselves and others. I'm impressed at how many of you guys remember that. That's good. So I was going to kind of close out the year with this fact of growing ourselves. And as I was contemplating what growing means versus building, and when you think of growing, you think of something that just kind of happens naturally. You plant a tree or you plant something, and you just kind of watch it grow. You water it every now and then, but it just kind of does its thing. But when you think about building, things don't get built on their own. They need somebody to build them. So I chose building, so it's a little change, but it's still the same thing. But building a life versus growing ourselves personally. So to grow is to be alive. To not grow is to slowly start dying. This is a true statement. If you guys see some of these has-been companies or has-been people who used to be at the top of their game, they were a thriving company, but all of a sudden they just got complacent and stopped changing and growing. As soon as they do that, they start dying. Instantly. If you're not growing, you're starting to die. So even in our personal life, if we're not taking steps to continue to move forward and grow and build, we start dying. We start getting just sitting in our same place, and we're no longer thriving and fully alive. So it's important to be growing. So today I'm going to talk about these four things. To build ourselves, we need to be real. To build, we need others. So we've got to have other people in our lives. To build takes determination. And number four, to really live, we must build. Like I said, if you're not growing, you're not alive. So if we want to grow, we need to be if we want to be alive, we must be growing. So we'll start with number one. To build, we must be real. And there's a lot of people who talk about this whole thing that people never change. That no matter what happens, it's like people are who they are and they don't change. I believe that to a certain point, but when you see people change is when they realize they're not at a good spot, and they're like, you know what, I want to grow, I want to change, I want to be different than what I am today. That is when you can change. So that all starts with being real. We can only build to the extent that we are honest with ourselves and where we are really at with our building. So if you have this false idea of who you are, and you think, oh, I'm really good at this certain thing, but you're not really good, you're never going to get better than where you're already at. So if I think I'm really good at, say, basketball, which I'm not, but I act like I am, I talk like I am, everybody around me, if they don't see me play, says, yeah, Jason's a really good basketball player. But if you see me on the court, I'm horrible. I mean, balls come flying at me, and I don't know that they're coming, and they hit me in the face. That's like the most scary thing about basketball when you're playing with good people. It's like you look over, and boom, the ball's there. So I could act like I am. I could think I am. And if I really think that, if I'm really that out of touch with reality, with the real person I am, I'll never get better. Because it's not like I'm practicing my skills or I'm asking people to help me. I'm out of touch with reality. So if you want to grow, if you want to build, you got to know where you're at. Does that make sense? You can't build on something that's not real, that's not like, if you're not in touch with reality and knowing what's going on. We must understand the fact that building doesn't happen on its own, and we are the only ones that can make it happen. So, like I said about growing, we think growing just kind of happens naturally. It's just, if you are older this year than you were last year, which I hope you are, it's like, oh yeah, I grew. But maybe you didn't. Because if you're not building, things aren't happening. You're not actually becoming something. So we must understand the fact, we must be real with the fact that if you're not building something, it's not happening. Nobody else is building it for you. Nobody else is going to build your life for you. Here's a big thing, and this is probably where it gets hard, because we're all independent human beings, and we like to act like we have it together and only show our good side. But to build, we need other people. Others can only help us build our life to the extent that we are real with them about who we really are, and the level they can help us depends on how much we want their help. So I want you to think about it as there's a construction zone. I'm building a house. I'm building it. And you see that I'm doing some things wrong, but there's no trespassing signs up, and I do carry some kind of shotgun or some kind of gun that I can shoot you if you come onto my property and try to help me build my house. This is real life when you put it into people changing and building their life. So only if I want you to come help me can you actually help me build my house. Because if I don't want you to, I'm going to shoot you as you come onto my property. And you might have your tool bag on, you might have all the tools, you're here to help me, but I think you're coming in and you're invading. I don't want your help. So if you want other people to help you, you have to actually invite them on. People who are in a certain place in life and don't want other people to help them, it doesn't matter how good the intentions are of other people trying to help them, they will get shot coming onto the property because we're very protective about our space. So if you want others to help you, you're gonna have to let them come in. And also, you're going to have to realize that you need other people to let them come in. Because when you let other people come in, they're going to take down a couple walls that you started putting up and say, that's not actually how you need to do this. So they're going to be correcting some things that you thought were right. So it's a little painful to let other people come in and help you. So we can only have the help from others when we let them see who we really are and we let them onto our property, our personal life, and start helping us. So to build, we need others, and allowing others to help us build our lives requires us to realize we don't have all the skills it takes to do it ourselves. This is a big one. We like to be self-sufficient, self-supportive. We like to be the guy who knows what's going on, but we have to realize just ourselves, we don't have it all. I need to meet with other people who have been down the road of leadership. I need to meet with other people who know how to deal with relationships. Whatever it is that you're trying to learn and grow, you can't learn from yourself. You need other people. So we have to realize we don't have all the skills. And then lastly, allowing God to build us makes us into something we never dreamed possible, and that is impossible without Him. This is huge. So with our own creativity and our own imagination and our own skills, we can get to a certain point. But when we add God, we add a supernatural element that changes everything. And I'm just going to plead my case a little bit here. God made each one of us, and He knows how He made each one of us. And we think we know how God made us and what He made us for. But do you know who really knows who made us and what He made us for? It's God. Other people are telling us what we're good at and what we're bad at. We're telling ourselves what we're good at and what we're bad at. But when it all comes down to it, we don't really know unless God is actually directing our lives. So for me personally, stepping into leadership, speaking, all these things are difficult for me. But it's one of those things that God has said, Jason, I want you to do it. And so I do it because I believe that God made me. He knows me better than I know myself. And if He's asking me to do it, He's designed me to do it, and He's going to give me what I need to do it. Does that make sense? So if I was just going off of what I believed about myself, I would not be right here right now. I would not do it. I would not be leading the fence experts. I would not be speaking to you. I would be probably farming or fixing up rental properties. I'd be doing something that doesn't involve many people. Okay? So the only reason I'm doing this is because God has told me to do it, and I know that God knows who He made me to be. And so when I start walking in what God has, all of a sudden there's something different than what I could have ever dreamed or imagined. So if we really want to build, we need to involve God if we want to go to that place that nothing else can take us there. To build takes determination. Building a life is hard work and is not for the lazy or careless person, as it requires us to do things that are uncomfortable. So if you just want to sit and just be complacent, not want to put any work into it or thought, don't think about building your life. but then be okay with whatever happens. Someday down the road, you're going to have this half-built house, and you're going to wish you had put time into building your life. So do the uncomfortable thing. Don't be lazy. It's hard work. And if you can think about your life as if you were building a house, you don't get to just decide not to take that house and buy another house. It's whatever you built that you get to live with. So it's worth the hard work, and you don't want to be lazy. You want to think about it. This is really interesting, the second point here. We grow most in the difficult moments life brings us, and it's in those moments progress leaps forward if we stick with it. All the times in my life, if I look back to the hard times in life, I grew like crazy. If I stuck with it, if I was trying to learn from it and I had a good attitude and I was making the best of the situation, those are the times that growth just accelerates, that building takes off. It's like the adversity and the difficulty are people coming in and helping me build. It's like things just happen exponentially. So if you're going to build something, expect hard times because it's not natural. Putting something up and building something is opposite of what happens in nature. If you think of a house that's just sitting there, it's going to deteriorate, it's going to get worse. But when you're building something, you're going against nature. And when we build our lives, it's actually like we're going counter to our nature. We like to just sit and be complacent and not change. But if you want to build something, you're going to have to work hard like we're talking about. It takes determination, and you're going to face difficulty. But in those times, you're going to grow like crazy. Building takes planning and requires intentional thinking. So when we built this area that we're sitting in right now, we had to come up with a blueprint. We had to decide how it was going to look, where we wanted things to be, who we wanted to do what we could do, what we had the skills to do ourselves, who we needed help from, all these things. It took planning, intentional thinking. And so if it's important to do that for just a stupid old building that might not be here in 50 years, how much more important is it to do it for your life? So that's what I keep thinking about in my life. Like, what do I want out of my life? What do I want to build in my life? So I need to plan. I need to think. I need to be intentional about it. So if you want to build something and you want it to look a certain way, you got to think about it. You got to think about what that end thing is that you want, and then work backwards like we talked about. You start with your goal and you build it backwards and connect the today with the future. So building takes planning and requires intentional thinking. And then this last one, building takes action, not just good ideas. For some reason, I, especially as a human being, and I'm sure you guys probably can relate to this, but just thinking about it makes me feel like I did it. There was a certain announcement that I wanted to say, and I asked Amanda, did I say this certain announcement? And she's like, I don't think you did. And I asked Sarah, and she's like, I don't think you did either. And here I had thought about it, that I wanted to say this certain thing, and in my mind, I said it. So crazy. It's this whole thing of, you have a good idea, you think about it, it's like, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I need to do that. And just because you thought about it, you reward yourself as if you had done it. But if you're going to build something, you actually have to take action. You actually have to do it. Take that good idea and make it happen. This is probably one of my biggest weak areas in my life. Anybody who's close to me knows this. I have a good idea, it's something I want to implement, and then it takes me a while to get there. So when I have ideas, I'm trying to slow my ideas down. So it's like, okay, am I going to implement this or am I not? I'm still learning. You guys have so much grace with me. Thank you. Guess you haven't had much choice. So this is the last, number 4. To really live, we must build. Like I said at the beginning, if you're not growing, you're slowly dying. So if you want to live, if you really want to live, you have to be building. The life we live is the life we built, and the life we're building is the life we're living. So it's like this circular thing. If you want to improve your bed, make it and take care of it. So you're sleeping in the bed you make. You're living the life you've built, and we're building the life we're going to live. Does that make sense? So we're at the place today because of the decisions we made yesterday. We're going to be at a certain place tomorrow because of the decisions we make today. So the life we live is the life we built, and the life we're building is the life we're living. A complete, fulfilling life is the reward of putting in the hard work needed to make it that way. Sarah and I have fixed up several houses, and it's hard work. I think Jonathan knows this right now. He's putting in nights and weekends, and anybody else who's working on houses. But it's really, really hard work. It requires a lot of sacrifice and dedication and just hard work and pushing through and getting in there, and you have a vision, and everything's a mess, and you're getting other people in, and you're working hard yourself, and you're rethinking, and all this stuff is hard work. But at the end, you get to live in your house, and you get that reward. I remember when Sarah and I fixed up her first house to live in, man, that was fun. When we moved in and we got to experience the hard work, it was so worth it. There was a lot of unfinished details that waited till we sold, but it's that whole thing for me of continuing my action. Like I said, it's my weak point. But it's worth it. It's rewarding. So when you do it, you get to enjoy it. And so something Sarah and I are doing is we're really being intentional about the life we live. Every single day here in real life, I want every single day to be amazing. Yes, there's hard things you face every single day, but I want to take time to enjoy the life that God has given me. And I want to build my life around having time to enjoy the life that God has given me. So it takes intentionality, but if you do it, it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. Just sit down and drink a cup of coffee, and that's all you do for 30 minutes. Very rewarding. How many people do that? 30 minutes to drink a cup of coffee. Yes. Guys, if you haven't experienced it, try it tonight. High caffeine right before you go to sleep. You'll feel the effects for a long time. And tomorrow. Try it in the morning. So following God's blueprint is the best built life there is. Here's the thing. God has certain things that he asks us to do as people. And sometimes we can view those things that God asks us to do as very difficult, or like, why is God taking all the fun out of life? Ever feel like that? I have already. But when we step back and we can clearly see what God is asking us to do as something that's good for us, it changes what God's asking us to do. Because if you think about the things that God asks us to do and not to do, they build a healthy, good life that can be rich with good relationships and people and a healthy way of living your life. So something that I've been thinking about is when God asks me not to do something, why does he ask me not to do it? And then if I can understand that, sometimes I can't and I still just have to do it. But if I can understand that, when God asks me not to divorce Sarah, that's because it's going to cause a lot of pain. So if I can continue to walk in a healthy way and work things out, it's going to be much better for my life and for Sarah's life. Does that make sense? So it's those things that God gives us that he tells us to do that build a good life. So the best blueprint for life is God's. So we're not. Thank you, Sarah. 12 years and going strong. We're celebrating our anniversary this week. Woo. But I'm just saying there's certain things where we see other people around us doing certain things that we think, oh man, that could be fun. Well, you do that for a while, and the results of that are not good. It can be fun in the moment, but it's that short-term thinking versus that long-term thinking. So something that I'm thinking about is just, why does God ask me to do things? And I want to do what God asked me to do because there's a reward. God has it set up. So if you think of an engine, if you don't add oil, it's going to hurt the engine. It's going to ruin the engine. We all know that. We've done that a couple times here, I think. So you need to add oil to your engine, or you need to put a certain kind of oil in your engine. You don't put antifreeze where the oil goes. You don't not change a filter for a couple years, whatever it might be. You change the tires on your car. There's certain things you're supposed to do, and they're there for a reason. It's the same way with what God asks us to do. It's there for a reason. If we build the things the way they're supposed to be, or if you think of building a house, you put a good foundation, you put your all the electrical work and all the framing and the windows and the doors, and the way everything works is to build a nice house, and there's a way to do it. There's codes because they want us to build a good house. It's the same way. I'll get off of that point. So Life is full of opportunity for those who are growing because they are moving. And you can't get anywhere without moving. You can get somewhere moving backwards, but it's not forward progress. So if you want to be able to respond to opportunity, you have to be growing and you have to be moving. It's the moving and growing people who can take advantage of opportunities. So remember this. If you remember anything from today, it's not wanting to be or the planning to be that builds a life, but the intentional action to be that builds a life we enjoy. So take those steps, take those action steps to building your life. You'll never regret it. For me, that's reading books, that's meeting with my mentors, that's listening to my wife, listening to people around me, talking to God, all these things that are constantly changing me and just kind of changing my direction and helping me grow. And I think at one point we had a little statement here on one of my mornings where we talked about you're going to be the same person you are today in 5 years from now except for the people you meet and the books you read. Remember that statement? That kind of comes in here. What are you doing to grow? What are you doing to bring in the expertise? You can't be the architect, the electrician, and all the framing and the roofing and the foundation. You can't be everything. You're not good at everything. You can't do everything really well. So what do you need? So be real with yourself about who you are. Invite others in to help you because you need them. And then take those action steps to actually grow. Stick with it. And then you're going to enjoy the life that God wants you to enjoy. So it's not wanting to be or the planning to be that builds a life, but the intentional action to be that builds a life we enjoy. So take those action steps. For me, it's reading a chapter and then rereading that chapter. Some people can read books one after the next. I am not that way because if I do, information goes in and I told you my weak point already is not taking action. So I slow myself down and I'll read a chapter, underline all the things that I think are really good. Think about it for a couple days. I'll come back and I'll reread that chapter again and looking at all the things that stood out to me and think about how I can apply it. Because I'm thinking about the ways that I am not good at life and the areas I need to build more, and it's that, putting things into action. So whatever it is for you, take those intentional steps.